It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV, it's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Apologies, Kieran, I think I shouted that hello there because I had some doubts as to whether I was actually recording and I wanted to make sure the little jagged line, I'm sure there's a technical name for the little jagged line. I wanted to make sure is it, and I know because there's a camera issue, you can't see me, Kieran, I can see you.
No,
see me?
No. I thought you'd be grinning from ear to ear after the weekend.
I am grinning from ear to ear, Kieran. I mean, it's not often between us we go away from home and score 6 goals between us. It's not sure I like that new stand, Kieran. We're going to have to discuss that. Fulham fans don't seem to like it. It's questions day, Kieran, but I think we should mention, and I'm not saying they did this deliberately, Kieran. It would indicate that they may have done because both teams did it 5 minutes after we finished recording, but both Arsenal and Manchester United put out their latest financial figures. A loss involved for both, I think. But we're going to talk about those in some detail on Thursday on our news pod rather than complicate what's already a pod full of really good questions. And also, I hesitate to say this, Kieran, but there might be a glimmer at the end of Reading's long tunnel. I'm sure Isabel Kingdom Brunel would have been very proud of the length of the tunnel that Reading fans have found themselves down. But that we'll be talking about that in some detail on Thursday as well, I believe. Is that right?
Yes. It looks like a deal has been agreed in terms of exclusivity. So we keep our fingers crossed. These things can collapse at times, but equally, we've seen many deals go through. So we should have more details. We are recording this on Monday afternoon, and the story was starting to break about an hour before we started.
Although I feel we should point out, Kieran, that we've had a couple of stories recently about clubs that have had 2 exclusivity deals going on at the same time.
Yes.
Meaning they either haven't got a thesaurus or they can't count, one or the other.
It sounds to me a bit like some of the Prowlers' relationships.
I dread to think. Also, I am looking forward to the leaked email story, the Man United, which came via a leaked email. Yes. Which I'm very. I tell you what, somebody today said Paddy Power having trouble keeping up with the Man United situation. They can't satirise Jim Ratcliffe more quicker than he can, essentially. Our first question today comes from Mark Goodchild. And talking to Manchester United, Mark Goodchild said, "Is it me or did the Glazers play a blinder here with the Jim Ratcliffe deal? They got 1.25 billion for minimal or little outlay on their behalf, and so Jim now has to go and pay for all the infrastructure, football outlay, etc.
Well, I'm glad Mark said that, because I've been thinking exactly the same for a year, but I've upset a substantial element of the Manchester United fan base for calling out Ineos and calling out the Glazers fairly non-stop in recent months. So I didn't particularly want to get involved in this particular bin fire. But the Glazers have done extremely well out of Manchester United, full stop. First of all, if we go back to 2005, they got Manchester United to borrow the money to allow them to buy the shares from the other shareholders. Since then, the Manchester United have paid out effectively £1 billion in interest on the loans, which the Glazers managed to persuade. Last year, Manchester United had to pay £35 million rather than the Glazers pay anything to advise the Glazers that it would be quite a good idea to sell part of the club. So, as Mark rightly said, they got the lion's share of this 1.25 billion from Jim Ratcliffe, who subsequently has put in well over £100 million himself as part of the deal. And the Glazers just sit there. And now Ratcliffe is taking all of the flack in terms of the changes which have been made at the club, which have hit fans, have hit staff, have hit disabled fans, have certainly hit goodwill, and haven't actually delivered anything on the pitch that's particularly memorable. Having said that, they'll probably now go and win the Europa League.
Which I imagine would be splendid. Well, no, it would be a big trophy. That's a successful season if they do win that. It's difficult to answer Mark's question directly here, Kieran. But could we perhaps suggest, whisper it quietly, that the Glazers saw Jim Ratcliffe coming? Could we say that Jim Ratcliffe has been outflanked here, that perhaps we underestimated the business acumen of the Glazers after all that time?
Well, there's a case for saying that Jim's 72. He wants a trophy asset to get him noticed, and he's certainly got that in the shape of Manchester United. A small story, you can multiply that 1,000 times if you stick MUFC as the hashtag for it, and that's part of the grandeur and the history of Manchester United as an institution. He's getting an awful lot of stick. The Glazers aren't getting the stick anymore in terms of the decisions that have been made. And he's having to put all the money up for this. And they just quietly smile away to themselves and sell off a few shares here and there and have done extremely well out of it. So you could argue that he overpaid. You could argue that he put his heart into the deal instead of his head, but that would imply that he has a heart. And given his treatment of staff, I'm not sure I'd agree with that. Yeah, the Glazers have played an absolute blinder here, and Jim Ratcliffe is out of pocket, and also he's out of goodwill with the Manchester United fan base. That goodwill, which was very much in his direction. I think there was the vast majority of Manchester fans bought into the story of he's putting the man back into Manchester rather than the deal going to Sheikh Jassim. I think there could be some buyer's regret on Jim Ratcliffe's part.
It's also a club you know much better than I do, Kieran. Could you argue that where the Glazers were quite shrewd is that they did at least tend to sit back and let other people run the club for them? It turns out, Jim Ratcliffe's saying they let far too many other people run the club for them, and it was very overstaffed. But it seems to me that the Glazers had a kind of light touch when it came to actual football matters.
So, certainly, they delegated those responsibilities in exactly the way that Sheikh Mansour delegated the responsibilities of running Manchester City, and you could argue that Stan Kroenke's done the same at Arsenal and so on. There's if we sat down and listed all of the faults of the Glazers, we'd still be recording this show in about 2 or 3 hours' time. The one thing I don't get is some people are saying, they created jobs in Manchester. That's a terrible thing. I don't. And our place is overstaffed. Well, they've got the third lowest wages to revenue ratio of any club in the Premier League. So it's never added up, that particular accusation. But they have delegated responsibilities, first of all, to Ed Woodward, who was a graduate of Bristol University, which is a fine institution, became an accountant and a banker, and replaced him with Richard Arnold, a graduate of Bristol University, who became an accountant and a banker. So, and yeah, there's a case for saying if you want to change the culture of the organisation, then you need to change the culture of an organisation.
Yeah, you know too much about some people, Kieran. You know that. And we can't still be recording in 2 or 3 hours' time, Kieran, because we've got to do the Q&A for
We have.
Price of Football Club members. I tell you, this never stops, this treadmill, Kieran. It's like a medieval surf. Gabe Newell as our next question. It's only a tenuous financial question, really, but it's still an interesting one, Kieran, so I'm happy to discuss it. And Gabe says, being a cricket fan, I was happy to find out that many football clubs, he's put Aston Villa, both Sheffield clubs, AC Milan, Genoa, but you could add 10 or 15 more to that list, were once cricket clubs. And initially, football was how the players would keep fit in the winter, which is absolutely true, until they realised which the superior game was, obviously, Kieran. But Gabe says, do you know any noteworthy football clubs which still field cricket teams? I can only... The closest thing I could think of was Northampton, which was the grounds backed onto each other, but I presume they must do, staff do. I mean, you play cricket up in that area, Kieran. You may have come across that.
Well, we used to do the audit of Manchester United, and we would have an annual cricket match against them. And I remember, the only reason I got that job in Manchester in the first place was the managing partner where we worked wanted to win the national cricket competition, and he looked at my CV, and my CV was not good. You know, I'd got a Desmond as my degree, and I'd moved from being an undergraduate to managing a sex shop, and here I was trying to get a job as a chartered accountant, and fortunately, he says, "Oh, it says you've trained with Sussex Under-19s Cricket Club." And I said, yeah, I've done that, sir. He says, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm an opening bowler." He said, "Oh, what do you do?" Yeah, so drift it back in, nip it off the seam, that type of stuff. "How swift are you?" "Yeah, I'm 6'3". I was about 6 stone lighter than I am now. So yeah, I was quite swift. And he said, "You're in." So I got this job having no knowledge of accounting whatsoever, and probably I was completely underqualified. There were some far better candidates than myself, purely on the back of my cricket. And we played against Manchester United, and we beat them. I was captain in one match, and we were under strict instructions. You know, play it easy. Martin Edwards was the chairman at the time. I think Gary Pallister and Steve Bruce were both playing. So no bouncers at the players. Don't do anything crazy. And I was sort of under instructions, and I said to lads, "Look, we need to make sure we lose this." And we managed to win by 1 run off the last ball of the match. Oh Christ! This isn't good for the client, purely because it was one of those instinctive things. I think one of their players hit the ball hard. We should have let it go through. And you stick out your hand as a cricketer instinctively. Somebody stick out, and they caught it. And we looked at him, and he looked, and he realised, I should have dropped that, shouldn't I? And so Martin Edwards locked the Manchester United cricket team in the changing rooms for half an hour afterwards to give them a bollocking. He took it very, very seriously. So certainly clubs in the north and the I've lived in the northwest of England most of my life. Do take it seriously. I played for the Metro, the Vickers Shipyard team. That was my cricket team, and we had a rugby team as well. So there were many decent quality clubs at non-league level who would have both a cricket and either a rugby or a football function. But as far as professional football clubs, as you rightly said yourself, what happened there was the success of football was so significant in the ability to generate crowds, generate revenues, that it tended to wither. Although we're both old enough, aren't we, to remember football players who would play cricket. Didn't Chris Balderstone?
Ian Botham?
Yeah.
Played for Scunthorpe?
Yeah. So there's a few, and certainly Phil Neville was a brilliant cricketer.
Yeah.
He was certainly good enough to play for Lancashire. Lancashire would have loved him to play. Gary's a decent cricketer. I've played against Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes, very good cricketer, but they were, and rightly so, they very much went down the football route because the rewards and the adulation is that much greater, and they're brilliant all-round sportsmen.
Yeah, so as I suspected, no real financial information in that story, Kieran, but it was worth it anyway, wasn't it?
No.
I often wonder whether Desmond Tutu was aware that he'd become the slang word for I haven't got a degree, Kieran, so it's not within my...
A sportsman's, it used to be known as, before Desmond's.
Oh, did it really?
Sportsman's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember asking Emma Freud once, who's an old friend of mine, how she felt about being the rhyming slang for hemorrhoids. She said she'd happily put it on her gravestone. It's probably it's probably the thing that makes her well known all around the world. Even people who don't know who. Again, it shows the ludicrousness of rhyming slang, really, because it's just as easy to say hemorrhoids as it is to say hemorrhoids. I can't imagine Victorian undercover detectives being bamboozled by that. Somebody's Frank the Snark's got hemorrhoids. That's why he's been in hospital. That's ludicrous nonsense. Now, this, Kieran, is a question about a story that we covered. It sort of shone like a supernova for a couple of weeks, and then it kind of fizzled away. But Jordan Smith says, can you shed any light on the current finances at Torquay United following the takeover by the Bryn Consortium last year?
Well, Torquay went through a really tough patch in terms of administration. They were losing £1 million a year before the takeover. Their attempts to get back into the 92 wobbled, I think, and that's part of the reason why we've been lending our voices to what the merits of 3 up, 3 down to the EFL are. Looking at what's happened in recent months, we've not seen any accounts yet come out for 2024, so that's the first thing to notice. But there does appear to have been some cash injections. They are now controlled by a company called Big in Business, which doesn't appear to be any irony there because it's a company which was set up for £1. Which my gut reaction doesn't make it particularly big business. So I am awaiting the Torquay United accounts, but there does appear to be stability there in the sense of they're not coming into my radar. It's a bit like the Gotham City backlight when my email starts pinging in terms of disaster stories. I've got it makes certain noises when there are certain word combinations. And Torquay haven't been on there recently, which is always good news.
Always good news, especially for our old friend Charlie Baker at TalkSport. He'll be delighted to hear that.
Average is not invited. Not if you're holding your company off-site in Las Vegas. We aren't on friendly terms with the bare minimum, and unenthusiastic is uninvited. Las Vegas's creative energy and world-class hospitality want to bring your company off-site to crazy new heights. That's why fear-based leadership is afraid of Vegas. And boring won't be there, but it will be watching the meeting recordings later. Plan for the extraordinary at vegasmeansbusiness.com.
Love, exciting and new. Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever. It's alive.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
Neil Fisher very politely says, I would like to ask a question about the Football Foundation. Neil, thank you for putting it so nicely. But Neil's question is this, Kieran. 2 non-league clubs that I have a supporting interest in, Winchester City FC, where I was born, and Yateley United FC, where I now live, passing over my slight disapproval, still retaining an interest in another club, Kieran, but each to their own. But 2 of these clubs have recently or are due to benefit from grants from the Football Foundation. Yateley United have had a new clubhouse built and pitch upgrades, and Winchester City have a new 3G pitch and other upgrades planned. I know that the Football Foundation is a charity funded by the Premier League, the FA and the government, but I'd like to know more detail behind the funding. How much is given by each of the funders? How much is granted by the foundation each year, and how the grants are decided, if you possibly could. I believe, Kieran, this is the first time we've spoken in any detail about the Football Foundation.
That's right, and it does fantastic work. You've got to give them credit for what they have done. As far as the income of the Football Foundation is concerned, they generate around about 135 million a year, of which 120 million comes from donations and grants. The biggest contributors are the Premier League with 18 million. That is matched by the Football Association. Sport England gives 80. So wow. That's the biggest single contributor. And then bizarrely, the Rugby Football Union and the Lawn Tennis Association both give £55,000. Oh, which is jolly good of them, I say.
Yeah. Nice, yeah.
Now, I suspect that could be sort of linking to Gabe's question earlier, that we have some institutions, some sporting institutions, which are part football, part rugby, or part football, part tennis, or part football, part cricket, and so on. And therefore, when you are applying for a grant, you can say this is to rebuild the clubhouse, and the clubhouse is used on a multi-sport basis, both winter and summer sports. So that will be the logic behind that. So that's in terms of the money given. As far as the distributions are concerned, the distributions are given on a merit basis. So therefore, what you have to do, you have to go through a formal process in terms of applying for the grants. And again, I think they're paid out in excess of £100 million of grants. It is normally for ground improvement, so that could be anything from floodlights to an all-weather pitch to facilities in terms of training. If you've got youth team, you've got a new women's team, you're looking for new changing rooms for those. So there's nothing which is ruled in, and there's nothing necessarily which is ruled out. Here, it's got to be said, my only reservation with these things, and it's not a criticism of the Football Foundation itself, is that some people are far better at applying for grants than others. You've got professionals who know the system and know what to write and so on. And without me wanting to appear to be trying to be down with the kids and going back to my Elephant and Castle roots, if you are from Southwark, you might not necessarily have that knowledge. If you are from an inner city area, if you are from an area which has got an awful lot of social deprivation, and here I do feel that I'm being harsh, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm from a working class background. I'm really proud of my working class roots and so on. And I've always said, just because I'm a working class lad doesn't make me stupid. But it's not having the familiarity with the nuances of grant application. That's always been my concern. And quite often what you do find at individual clubs, you've either got somebody who's good at it, or you've got somebody who knows somebody who's good at it. Yeah. And these people are like hen's teeth in terms of their value to an individual club.
Unfortunately, Kieran, that's an issue throughout the charity sector. And many charities do have, as you say, people who are employed full-time to apply for grants. It doesn't remove the benefit of the goodness of the people giving the grants. But just remind me, Kieran, of the Premier League figure that's being donated there.
18 million, which is great. And we did have Claire from the Premier League on the show a couple of weeks ago, and that's to be applauded.
Well, absolutely. Well, also, I'm trying to be fair to the Premier League here, Kieran. So I want to head off those people who go, "Oh, hang on, the Premier League can afford much more than that." But this is far from the only money that the Premier League donates to football charities and other causes, isn't it? It goes way beyond the Football Foundation.
That's right. There's a wide range. If anybody wants to read the accounts of the Premier League, go to Companies House, and the company is called the Football Association Premier League Limited, or go to the Charities Commission website, and type in the name of the Football Foundation or another charity, and you will be able to identify the financial statements, how the money's coming from in terms of sources, and also how it's been spent. So the Charities Commission does as good a job as it can in terms of trying to ensure transparency and trying to ensure that all those people who do magnificent work for charities, that money is being spent appropriately.
And do we know, Kieran, if there's an upper or lower limit on what you can apply for? Can you ask for 50 quid for a new kettle, or can you ask for £1 million for new floodlights, or is it somewhere in between, do we think?
I don't know the exact details. I will do some ferreting.
Yes, well, I'd be interested in talking more about this, because I think I think football fans are always pleased and sometimes a little bit surprised to hear how much money is. We all know that nowhere near enough money, Kieran, is distributed to the grassroots, but that doesn't mean that no money is distributed to the grassroots. So I think football fans would be very interested, our listeners particularly, to learn that there are considerable sums. So if anybody from the perhaps not the Premier League again, Kieran, it's a lot of palaver getting them on in the first place, really. So maybe somebody from the Football Foundation might be nice.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
That would be great, wouldn't it? It would be nice. So we're just getting we're painting the smiles on ready for the football club thing tonight. Making sure we're in a good, positive mood. Our penultimate question, our last question, is a very interesting one, and our penultimate one is as well. It comes from Lincoln Pigman, and Lincoln says, "I have a question about academy products. It won't be a common occurrence, but if a club signed back an academy product later in their footballing career, could a subsequent sale of that player still qualify as pure profit? Is there anything in writing explicitly indicating that only the initial sale of an academy product qualifies as pure profit?" It strikes me as an interesting technicality, this one, Kieran.
It is, and thank you very much for this question, Lincoln. And I think actually you raise a very interesting point, and this is not a criticism of you at all. You talk about them as products.
Yeah,
and
fair point.
And we all do. And the number of times that I've been on podcasts or I get queries from media and so on, and we end up talking about young men, and on some occasions young women, as if they are commodities. And the purpose of those commodities is to cover up the poor decisions which have been made elsewhere in the club, such that the club either has a cash crisis or it's about to have breach of PSR. And therefore, the young player who does Conor Gallagher want to play football for most of all? It's Chelsea Football Club. Who you look at all of these these players. Anderson at Newcastle, he's a Geordie. He bleeds black and white, and he's also a professional footballer, and he understands when the club comes to him and says, "Look, we've got a bit of an issue here. We've got a big danger of breaching PSR. Could you do the honourable thing?" And they do. From a career point of view, they understand it's a professional game and so on. But I think football, another brick is taken out of the wall every time this happens, and it happens an awful lot over the course of the last 12 months. But back to Lincoln's question. When you work out profit is calculated for PSR purposes and for accounting purposes as being the sale price or the compensation price which is paid for the player's registration, less the book value at the date of sale. And the reason why academy players generate 100% profits is that when that child joins the football club at the age of 8, 9, whenever it's going to be, no fee is paid. It's a case of, you look good, do you fancy coming along and playing for whoever the club happens to be, join the academy. And it also has to be remembered there's a 99.8% failure rate in terms of those children becoming professional footballers. Everybody knows the score. Everybody knows what those figures are, but it's a bit like buying a lottery ticket. The chances of winning are very, very remote, but people still do it on a weekly basis. So as far as the first sale is concerned, that is why there is a profit. If you subsequently buy the player back, so let's say that Manchester City sold Cole Palmer last year to Chelsea for £40 million, and they buy him back this summer, and let's say it cost them £100 million. He would then have a purchase price of 100 million. So if Manchester City subsequently sold him, it would be the sale price less his cost. So you have to take that £100 million less any amortization off, and that would determine the profit. So as far as the pure profit is concerned, Lincoln, it's a once and once only issue, unless you buy the player back for nothing, of course.
Yeah. Josh Helm as our last question, Kieran. I'm not sure if Josh Helm would like me saying this, but the reason I'm interested in his question, apart from the fact it's a very interesting question, is it strikes me that there's a little bit of you in Josh Helm, Kieran, and there's a little bit of me in Josh Helm, Kieran. Because Josh says, I work in politics and I'm lucky enough to get invited to events run by the Premier League quite often. So that's you. It's a little bit of you there, Kieran.
No. I can assure you, I never get invites from the Premier League.
You get a lot of invites, Kieran. Let's just say, for the purposes of this metaphor that I'm chasing down this back alley here, that you get a lot of invites to things. More than I do, Kieran. Let's face it. Anyway, so Josh Helm says, despite not being a fan of a club in the Premier League, I do go along as I am incapable of turning down a free bar. So there's a little bit of me. There's a little bit of me and Josh. So yeah, you see where I'm going with this. While I was at the latest event celebrating charity work by the Premier League through Premier League kicks, etc., it made me wonder how much the Premier League spends on events lobbying people within politics, government, etc. per year. From some of the events I've been to previously, I imagine it's quite a lot. But it's never occurred to me to actually consider how much all these events cost. I mean, from time to time, Kieran, especially in the silly season, the tabloids will say politician X turned up at Royal Ascot or Wimbledon. What are they getting in return? But I think it is. Yeah, I'd almost hoped to get through a whole pod without mentioning the regulator, but with all the political shenanigans going on in the background between the Premier League and politicians, I think this is a very pertinent question because there is a heck of a lot of lobbying going on, isn't there?
Yes, we can identify certain costs because under the rules of Parliament, parliamentarians have to disclose any gifts, any hospitality issues to which they have benefited. So therefore you can, on an MP by MP basis, see if a member of Parliament has been entertained by a club in the Premier League or the Premier League itself, or by the EFL or even the SPFL. And what are they going to do there? Well, they're going to enjoy the sporting event. Or Ed Sheeran, I think it wasn't he taken to, wasn't the Prime Minister, or certainly some MPs think, but ended up going to see Ed Sheeran at a football ground on behalf of the Premier League or another sponsor. And provided that's disclosed, that's fine. Are they going to have a conversation there? Well, I think it's inevitable that conversations will take place. And I've got absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, if there's one thing that I've really picked up since we started this show 5.5 years ago, I am quite cynical about politics. And as you know, I've got no party political affiliations, but I've been extremely impressed by every single member of Parliament who has come on. And we've had Stuart Andrew from Rishi Sunak's government. Of course, we've had Tracy Crouch a couple of times. We've had people from the Labour Party as well. We had the Minister for Sport, effectively, on a couple of weeks ago. And Lisa Nandy was very professional, very, very well briefed, and that sort of restored my faith. So do I think that every time an MP is taken for a burger or an event, are they going to capitulate, and are they going to act as the lackeys of the person or the organisation that's giving them hospitality? I don't think that is the case. When you have a conversation with somebody, it does give you, however, an opportunity to see an alternate point of view. And personally, I think that's good, because the regulatory bill in its present form isn't perfect, and therefore I think scrutiny and opportunities to improve it can and should be made, and I think they will be made, provided it's not filibustering through members of the House of Lords. In terms of the overall cost, we don't know that. What you can do is that you can look at the Premier League's accounts. And again, I would always urge somebody who's broadly interested in this to go to Companies House, Football Association Premier League Limited, and you will see the running costs of the Premier League. And what we have seen in recent years is a substantial increase, not only in the wage cost of the Premier League, which I find ironic, given that one of the Premier League's reservations about the regulator is the wage costs. The average cost of employing a single employee in the Premier League is £141,000. Yeah, that's pretty steep. But then you look at, if you take the sort of the total running cost, you take away the wages, you see that other costs have gone up as well. Now, I've got to be honest, a substantial amount of those other costs are going to be legal costs. And we know that the Premier League sort of rather coyly said, or reluctantly said to journalists, yes, they've gone up far faster than we've anticipated. Even if you take those out, the other running costs do appear to be nipping up as well. How much of that is lobbying, we're not able to tell. The Premier League did say it wasn't going to lobby against the independent regulator, and since then it appears to have done a bit of a U-turn on that. So we can't give a definitive figure, Josh, including how much it costs for your free bar.
You leave Josh alone. He deserves. He's
been great. Yeah, it's a really good question.
I don't know what he does, but he deserves that free drink. You lean on that bar like you own it, Josh.
So good. Great brands, great prices. Everyone's got a reason to rack.
Because they have framed jeans.
Nike? Yes.
Just so many good brands.
Vince, Kurt Geiger London, Rag & Bone, and more are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's going to be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Again, it comes back to that distinction between the Premier League, Kieran, doesn't it, and individual clubs within it, because the Premier League could argue they're not lobbying against the regulator, but there's no doubt that there are individual club owners who are lobbying against it. But it raises a bigger question, which is when you've got a government with such a big majority, lobbying strikes me as quite pointless in the first place. There's no real point sweet talking government politicians when it's going to get through in the House of Commons, and there's no point spending money lobbying Tories or Lib Dems because they've got absolutely no influence on it getting through. Full stop. It seems to me. So what you're buying is PR essentially, which is why you possibly see a lot of Premier League club owners going down the making friends with journalists route than making friends with politicians these days.
Yes, I mean, at the same time, you can't... I think the Premier League, when we had them on, it said, actually, we are in favour of a regulator because they can't say this explicitly. Implicitly, what they're saying, we can't trust our own members. We can't trust our own shareholders in terms of another project big picture, which was an attempt of a domestic coup of English football by its own, by some of the biggest clubs involved. It was a power grab, and that scared the Premier League. Also, Super League, again, that was an attempt of a coup of European football, of which there were 6 members of the Premier. That's 30%. So the Premier League, when they came on the show, Claire and Paul from Brighton, they both said, actually, we quite like the idea of having some form of legislation that will protect the game from these issues. It's when it comes to giving money to other people, we don't particularly like it.
I'll tell you what, Kieran, I mean, I enjoyed that interview anyway. I would have enjoyed it far more if Claire from the Premier League had accidentally said in front of Paul Barber, well, we can't really trust the clubs, that's the trouble. That would have been that would have been job done, move over. Thank you, Gary Lineker. Oh dear. Anyway, don't forget you can now join our Price of Football Club. We will get ad-free listening, bonus episodes and more, including a Q&A in about 2 hours' time, or if you're listening on Tuesday morning, which you will be about 10 hours ago, just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. One important thing to be aware of, though, as I keep telling you, if you are one of our original Patreon subscribers, your membership will not transfer over automatically if you sign up to the new club. You'll need to cancel that Patreon subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. We'll turn off our Patreon offering at the end of this month. That sounds very final, doesn't it? But if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, X, and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, looks like the T-shirt's gone, Kieran, because that's
Yes.
If you'd like to buy our book, you can find details on their website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday. No interview this week, so we'll be back on Thursday with our big news pod where we'll be covering Arsenal, Manchester United finances. Hopefully, we'll have more news on that Reading deal as well, plus a lot more. Trust me, I've already seen the first script. Meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
And as well as our offerings to club members, we're delighted to say we're back on tour.
Oh, we are yes.
Going to South Yorkshire. With a huge thanks to Rotherham United. They have they've agreed to allow us to come to the New York Stadium, and I've been there. I've been to Millmoor as well, of course, but it's a cracking stadium. So if you are a fan of Rotherham or any of the other clubs in South Yorkshire, it will be fantastic to see you. It's a great show. We nominally say it'll be 90 minutes long, but it tends to work out for about 2.5 hours, and then we are open for discussion in the pub afterwards. So normally it finishes when staff kick us out, and we can be remarkably indiscreet with some of the stories we know about club owners, and we're not quite sure of how the libel laws say when. Well, I can't tell you officially, but you never guess what such and such got up to.
Yeah, but the thing is, Kim, we have discussed the libel law, and we do know that we are skating on very thin ice quite so.
Yes, we're skating on water.
Also, if you do come along, please enjoy the sight of Kieran with his elaborate signature. Managing to take up the whole page of a book when I have to try and squeeze mine in the corner. Plus, I'm quite happy. I'll sign things. I say, who do you support? And people say, they tell me, and I'll take the piss out of that club and move on. Whereas Kieran's one of these people who likes to talk to everyone who comes up to him when he signs, which is why his queue's always a lot longer than mine. But there you go. I'm at the bar by this time. So, also, I should point out quite a lot of my evenings end up when the staff throw me out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.